Brooklyn Independent Television.
Hey, it's a big borough.
Brooklyn really go for
Why don't we just agree to disagree?
Yeah, that's really gonna fly in
Well, that's a
Brooklyn.
good question.
No. Listen.
That's exactly the point I wanted to make.
By all indications, Mitt Romney will face Barack Obama in the race for the presidency of the United States in 2014. A little closer to home, politicos are lining up to throw their hats into the ring to run for the mayor of the Big Apple, when Bloomberg leaves after an unprecedented third term. Closer still, Marty Markowitz will vacate Borough Hall after 12 years on the job. 2014 may seem miles away, but there are 3 chances to go to the polls between now and the end of 2012. This is Intersect, and today we're getting a political primer. I'm joined by Carole Melhman, a member of the board of directors of the New York City chapter of the League of Women Voters, and the man behind Kings County Politics, a senior editor at Our Times Press, columnist and reporter Stephen Witt. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So like I said, we're all caught up in the presidential race and who's going to be running against whom, but we've got some substantial decisions to make in Brooklyn coming up in the next few months even. So what are you guys most excited about that's on the sort of political radar that we should be aware of coming up in Brooklyn?
Well, we have a congressional race that's early on.
Right.
And people will be a little bit, I think, confused because of the change in the numbers of the congressional district.
Right.
From 10 to 8, and with Towns leaving and Hakeem Jeffries and Charles Barron in a primary, I think that's a kind of a Brooklyn focus right now, closer than the borough president, where there's a lot of jockeying, and it somewhat might depend on what happens in the primaries before that.
Oh, you said a mouthful, Carole. I'm going to give you a chance to jump in there, Steve.
I think the 7th congressional race between Hakeem Jeffries and Charles Barron is the race everybody in Brooklyn is watching.
Right.
Ed Towns mysteriously dropped out. I'm a little
After
suspect about that.
decades and decades in Washington.
I have different theories, and I've heard different theories. One theory is it came from the White House.
Really?
That I've heard recently that Ed Towns, the last time out, supported Hillary Clinton because Hillary Clinton was the senator.
She was our New York senator, and he went against the sort of prevailing knowledge and threw his endorsement behind Senator Clinton.
Right, and then Hakeem Jeffries was an early backer of President Obama.
Right.
And I think because, I don't know whether that's true, but Hakeem Jeffries manages to be at once progressive and at once kind of the machine candidate.
Yeah.
He kind of...
So think just that when you said it, if that is true or not, it's just something interesting to talk about. Do you think that something like an Obama sort of endorsement or leaning could work its way back to Brooklyn politics on that level? If he said, you know what, you were supporting Hillary back then and you've been here a long time, why don't you just sunset out and be graceful and let this new guy who endorsed me come up?
I think anything's possible. I mean, I'm not sure. I did call Vito Lopez, who's the Kings County boss of Brooklyn, the Democratic chairman of Democratic Party in Brooklyn, and I said, I heard that this came from the White House, and he issued a no comment.
Well, I don't know. I kind of thought that when Ed Towns saw that he had to start running now and raise money now, and he had always kind of walked in without having to do anything.
But he always had oodles of money. Like the last race when he ran against
Kevin Powell.
Kevin Powell from who's now an activist, and you might know him from The Real World eons ago. That was the sort of claim to fame. He could have sent everybody in the district $10 and not campaigned at all and won the thing.
I didn't follow the money in this, but I'm wondering if the money that he used to get was going to Hakeem Jeffries. And that started feeling that this was going to be more difficult.
Of a competitive, because he's not had a competitor in
he did. He did in 2006 when Roger Green, who held
that was a race,
who held Hakeem Jeffries' current seat, and Charles Barron.
Right.
Charles Barron nearly pulled that out.
Yeah.
And I think Charles Barron and Hakeem, if you look at that race, it's going to be very interesting. Hakeem has, they talk about money, he's got so much more money than Charles Barron.
And endorsements. You heard about that recently.
He's got
left and right.
All kinds of endorsements. And Hakeem, I think for the, I cover the African American community, you might not look at it, but I think for the African American community, either one is good.
Yeah.
Because I think Hakeem is very knowledgeable, he's progressive, he's sharp. I think Charles is an activist.
Right.
He's feet on the ground. He might not be able to get legislation, but sometimes you need a guy banging a shoe on the table.
Yeah.
And Charles is that kind of guy. So I think they're both very good candidates for the African American community.
Looking at that race in particular, if a Hakeem, who is this young, like you said, has this duality, who's progressive and at the same time of the establishment sort of endorsed, versus the sort of older model of, I know we're fond of calling Barron the activist incumbent, where he is this old former Black Panther Party person who's been elected as a representative now, as elected official, and melds those two worlds successfully in the number of times he's been elected. If it's the sort of old school Black political power versus a newer, more Obama model.
I think it is
power.
that exactly.
Yeah.
And I also think that the district is only 55% Black.
Yeah.
And the old voting rights districts used to be a lot higher.
Right.
So they do have to campaign to get Sheepshead Bay in there, Mill Basin.
Yeah. And rope in some more
Brighton Beach.
diversity.
Bring in more independence, maybe,
and
you know, when it comes to it.
No, I'm sorry. I just think that Hakeem Jeffries is that kind of new base, and if there is such a thing as post-Black, I don't want to say post-racial,
right?
But if there's post-Black, I think in the next 5 presidents, maybe 3 of them might be people of color, because they understand the political landscape, and they know how to cross lines like Obama.
So that's a whole other half-hour show
sorry.
that I'm asking you. Let's pre-book you right now to come back and discuss that.
Well, there's talk about, you know, if Charles Barron doesn't win the primary, that he may just jump into the borough presidents.
Which is, there were other, you're just getting us right down this path, Carole. There was talk before about him mounting a campaign, and I remember speaking to him about that a few years ago before the term limit thing, when which was the game changer, and it switched up what everyone was running for. As far as I know, there's only one candidate who's out there saying, I want the job.
Yes, Marty Markowitz's former chief of staff, Carlos Cesaro, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Cesaro?
Yeah. I always have a little trouble with that.
Yeah.
I thought he had backed out.
He was running, but he took the job as the Chamber of Commerce president, the Brooklyn.
For the departed Carl Hum. So he's, which Carlos said, hey, a big part of me wanting to be BP was to get Brooklyn on this right footing economically, so instead of having to go to 1 million dinners a night and kiss all the babies, I'll just slide into the Chamber of Commerce.
The only declared kind of declared is Eric Adams, the state senator who was in Marty's old seat, and I spoke with Eric.
Isn't that funny? Like Marty was in the New York State Senate for a long time. I want to say 16 years. Between 16 or 20. I don't know. I'm messing it up. Google it. You'll find out how long Marty was in, and write to me and let me know. But he was there, and then Eric Adams took his seat, and now he might follow the same path to the borough presidency.
Well, Assembly and Senate gives you name recognition.
Yeah.
And then that's not an abnormal, that's what happens. And when you have so many different positions open, the moving around is you can hardly follow. And then a lot depends on what happens in the primaries.
But you
people
know what?
May switch.
Going back to the thing we talked about with Jeffries and Barron, that seat, the sort of divergent constituency that you had there, maybe that is a prime example of that district moving into the borough presidency, some of the kind of lines you have to straddle.
Very diverse district.
That
very
district
diverse.
is very diverse. You're pulling from
Eric,
the Jewish community, the Black community, some more gentrified now, so there's a whole bunch of...
Brooklyn is like...
It's Brooklyn.
And it moves into Sunset Park a little bit,
Yeah, so there's a whole other constituency there. We talked about the voting rights you mentioned a second ago, one of the old voting rights district.
Right.
So I'm sort of steering us from the BP race into the district that is currently represented by Yvette Clarke, which was the
Right.
old Shirley Chisholm seat, now occupied by Yvette Clarke. But she's facing another challenge from a legacy of Shirley Chisholm as well.
Sylvia.
Sylvia Kennard, who's very formidable.
Which you can't mention Sylvia Kennard without saying
Bill
the
Thompson.
ex-wife of Bill Thompson, which I think is very puzzling
and
to me.
he may be running for borough president.
No, he may be running for mayor.
Mayor again.
Mayor, right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Correct.
So he just missed it by a hair this last time, and despite being
So-
out moneyed.
So that
with
was
the
an
Bloomberg
interesting,
race.
all the play between those two.
Yeah.
Well, I think looking ahead to mayor, which is still an election away, because we have 3 elections this year. We have the congressional primary in June 26th, I believe.
Right. I have it written down.
Yeah.
I rarely take
Yes,
notes. But
I have notes too
I
for
wanted
that
to
reason.
be honest, so you can get your butt out there and vote. But the state primary is September 11th this year. The general election is November 6th, but coming up first, the congressional primary, June 26th.
Correct. So looking at those 3, we have
All right.
in Brooklyn, we have Sylvia Kennard versus Yvette Clarke in, what is that, the 9th? They renamed it?
I think it's still, isn't it?
eighth?
Oh, yeah,
No.
no, because the 8th
Yeah,
is
yeah.
Hakeem. And
The 8th
Oh.
is that the 10th is now the 8th, and it's the
Yeah.
11th.
Oh, it's the 11th.
It's a lot.
So we have that in Flatbush, and I would say Yvette's a front runner.
So in that race, the whole thing is, who is Ms. Kennard? Like, I don't think she has. She works currently at Medgar, I believe, at Medgar
Right.
Evers as their diversity and
EEOC.
EEOC person who keeps them in line there. But why? What other kind of recognition? Because I don't feel like a lot of voters know her. Yvette Clarke, of course, the political legacy, the family, the Una Clarke, and city council. So now she's our representative in Congress. So it's an uphill battle, huh?
It's an uphill battle, and I'm surprised Sylvia would pick to run for
This
Congress
race.
as her first race.
Yeah,
So it's kind
right
of
out of the
a
box.
step up.
That's what I thought.
Against Yvette Clarke, too, who, interestingly enough, she worked previously for her mom, former city council member Una Clarke.
Right.
Sylvia Kennard was a staffer for her.
Having interviewed Sylvia, I think she's a very intelligent woman.
Yeah.
She's got a lot on the ball, but it is a big uphill battle.
A lot of people think that Yvette's mother is, going to
Kind of what?
pull out
Yeah.
all the stops, whatever.
To keep her daughter in the seat.
that's what when you read, the political things online, that's kind of the underlying.
And it's a heavily Caribbean American district.
But there's also, again, a Jewish voting bloc in that area as well that can't be ignored if you want to be successful. I know she got criticism on her stance on Israel. Yvette Clarke, there's been some chatter from somebody, I don't know who, is saying she might be soft on her support of Israel, which isn't playing well in the district.
That's been talked about,
Yeah.
and it's questioned. I don't think it will have much of an effect on the race.
Yeah.
Because she's the incumbent, she brings home the money to the district.
Just name recognition, frankly. She's got the...
She's a little more nuanced on Israel.
Yeah.
I heard both of them speak, and they both speak well.
Yeah.
But at least the local community that groups that I've been to seem to support Yvette Clarke. Now, that's not necessarily going to tell in the general electorate because these are active people.
So we got into just a second ago the talk about the sort of alphabet soup or more number soup that's going on with the districts, and you don't even know where you are living anymore according to the different lines.
So if I might give a plug for the League of Women Voters.
Please. But let's talk about what the League does. Like when we hear the League of Women Voters, it's not a bunch of old ladies in hats sitting around drinking tea, inviting men to come in and tell them what they're going to do for them. Give us a little brief intro to the League.
Well, we're out there right now registering new voters,
Right.
particularly young voters, who still have a chance to enroll in a party and take part in the primary. In addition to that, we have a website and an information phone line.
Right.
The website, lwvnyc.org. And the phone number, I want to make sure I get it right, 212-725-3541. And before the election, you can go to the League of Women Voters website 30 days before, type in your address, and it will tell you the location of your polling place and give you a sample ballot.
Nice.
And the sample ballot, I think, is going to help people more than almost anything else.
Yeah.
We also put out a voter's guide. So, and those are distributed as widely as possible. And voters will need these aids more than they ever did.
Yeah.
Because of the changes in the districts, the moving around, the changing of the players, incumbents that are not running that they expect to see, and new names that they've never seen. They're just going to have to do more homework to be informed than is the usual. And the League of Women Voters is going to do everything that we possibly can to help people become informed and stay informed as these races, because they're going to evolve and change after every primary, and the player's going to change.
And even if you are a man and you go and type in LWVNYC, you can still get those voter guides.
And you can join.
You can join.
We've talked about this for years, but we never want to change the name, but you can join. And I've been in chapters where men have been presidents of the local chapter. So everybody is welcome to join.
It's very 2012 of you, Carole. So guys, the League of Women Voters, why not? So one of those evolving districts is where Brooklyn's messiest, most long-running, highly contested political battle in recent memory has been playing itself out. The old Carl Kruger seat, where we still don't know who the hell the representative is going to be of a place that is going to soon only exist in memory because the district is being wiped out.
And by the time they settle it, the legislature will be out of session.
Yeah.
They're not even going to sit. Whoever is decided wins, not even going to sit.
I do think, though, the story from that election, more than anything else, is the growth of the GOP.
Yeah.
I think that
Brooklyn is Democrat country.
Brooklyn is
what
Democrat country,
about,
but
Steve?
more and more in southern Brooklyn with the former Soviet Union base.
Yeah.
I mean, Lou Fiddler came from the very strong Thomas Jefferson Democratic Club in Canarsie. Everybody thought it'd be a walkthrough, but Sheepshead Bay is becoming more and more Republican.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for politics. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it
keep the discussion going.
It keeps the discussion going, but the Republican Party is gaining a small foothold. I wouldn't. It's a little more than a toehold now.
They moved from toe to an entire foot. But we've had David Sorobin on, as well as Russell Gallo, who are headed up the Kings County Republican Party now.
Right.
And they're excited about the progress. We've also, on Brooklyn elected officials, had Danielle Maliatakis, who took Janelle Heyer-Spencer's seat, who's a young Republican. It's a new face of Republicanism here in Brooklyn.
The only thing it would possibly affect even the congressional race with Barron and Jeffries, except that Obama's the general election is the same day that the Obama election, so I expect a huge Democratic turnout for that.
Yeah.
But I think the Republicans are gaining.
For so many years, the primary that's Democratic has been the real election, especially at the borough president level and here in Brooklyn, because it's so heavily Democratic. I don't even know of any Republican challengers. It seems to be Eric Adams is the one out front, but I recently read something about Brad Lander's name being bandied about. So he's in his first term as city council member from Park Slope. Was formerly over at Pratt, working there,
and he seems to be very popular in his district.
He's done to his credit, like he and Jumaane Williams in particular.
Jumaane, I think, is a rising star.
Well, frankly, I think they both are. They are these young New York City council members, went in the same freshman class, and they've recently were here even talking about their participatory budget scheme,
Right.
where it's sort of like the American Idol of budget politics, where people in the district submit plans and they all vote for different things that they'd like to see. But they're very plugged in. They have emails and state of the district things that they do, and lots of sort of model for a new brand of transparency that I think would serve the city council well, and any other sort of office that they chose to run for.
I think they're both up-and-comers. We'll have to see. I mean, Letitia James is looking at public advocate,
Yeah.
Fort Greene, Clinton
Yes.
Hills City Councilwoman.
Yeah,
Brad.
She's another one.
Immensely popular, Letitia James.
Yeah,
who-
and she goes, I mean, she's everywhere in the community. Wherever you go, she shows up. She's
So
there.
does that mean that she's gonna have a race against another popular Brooklyn-based Politico who happens to be the control? I'm sorry, that's a whole other thing. The public advocate right now, Bill de Blasio.
He's
Did you
going to
see
go
a
for mayor.
He's gonna, yeah.
Yeah, he's all mayor. I mean, he's going to make it, but it looks like
But
his eye is
typically
very.
That's
office
why she's
is the
looking at that.
pathway to the mayoral, either the comptroller and the public advocate. That's
But
the
I
sort
think
of,
that's why she's looking at that.
that's the holding tank of
position.
the
Well,
mayor.
if we look at before Bloomberg, right, who
Yeah.
was a businessman,
Right.
spent a lot of money to get elected. Talk
Yeah.
about $5. If every voter could get $100 for all he spent.
And he barely won, though. Like, he really, as far as Brooklyn is concerned, Bill Thompson was the mayor.
Yes, yes, but I do think that moving into that race, we have de Blasio,
Right.
and we have John Liu, the controller. Oh, I know what I wanted to say, though. The last couple, before Bloomberg, was Giuliani, who I
Right.
believe was a DA,
Yeah.
right? And before him was David Dinkins, who was Manhattan Borough President.
Right.
So if even though they say controller and public advocate is a stepping stone,
We have
borough
several.
presidents that have talked about running.
right.
So is
Also
Marty
from
Markowitz
there.
going to get in the race? We know Scott Stringer has been
Scott Stringer
buzzing around.
and even Ruben Diaz.
That would be interesting.
I'm not counting out John Liu.
Really?
People. I'm not counting him out at all.
Well, he just had his statement the other day. What did he say? I'm going to be surprised or go for it all. He said something about going. I'm totally misquoting. It's all in the Twitterverse. I was reading something by Ozzy Paraba over at The Observer, and he was saying something about John Liu made a statement when they were talking about all these taxi things, but he was going to go for it all or something.
I think if John Liu
I'm
can
misquoting.
get beyond this scandal with campaign contributions,
Yeah.
I think he's going to be very viable. And people don't realize it, but he'll get out the Asian vote tremendously.
But there is a lot of baggage behind that, because there's some people saying he may not even finish out his term,
Right.
let alone
If he finishes out his
get
term.
So that's New York politics. If you can in one breath say if he gets to finish his term, he might have a run at the mayorship. That's
Well,
I mean, people are talking about people, Spitzer coming back. I mean, it's, I mean, all of
he's
these.
just trying to get on MSNBC.
I think, I don't know. I think the general public, to some extent, the contribution problem, the money problem, is more of a problem than the personal problem thing in voters' minds. I think they can overcome that.
I think John Liu has gotten a little bit of a bad rap from the major media.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is as controller, he has constantly questioned contracts.
He's
something Bill
on the
Thompson
job,
did.
yeah.
And he has a strong black constituency and Asian, and he doesn't fit the norm of the white guy that kind of runs
He's been
everything.
the most visible comptroller. Like, people know this guy, and it's not just for scandal. Like, he's out there, and he seems to be doing his job.
And I think Simca Felder, as assistant controller, will help bring in the, if possible, if, like I say, if he can escape charges.
Yeah.
It's a long, we have a long road before we get there. So the things can change
They will change.
all the time.
And then we have Ray Kelly.
That's really.
Which is another outside. So we know Chris Quinn is in. So
Right.
we're going to close out talking about the mayorship, because we could go on. So Chris Quinn, yes.
Right.
Who else is a definite sort of thing? De Blasio is like all indications say he's going to run, and these are both Democratic challengers. Scott Stringer, a sort of perennial candidate who is the Manhattan borough president. Marty Markowitz, up or down? Is he going to venture for the mayorship? He's got the name recognition, and he's got $5 in the war chest. So
I think he's great, and he would be great, but I think he's burnt. He's a little
the
old.
fire doesn't seem like
I don't
it's
think
there.
it doesn't show that he's not acting as if he's.
Although to succeed Marty in borough president is going to be tough, because Marty.
It's a tough act to follow.
That's a tough act to follow.
But Eric Adams, is it his to lose?
Yes, in my opinion. And I think he's a really good guy. He's an ex-cop.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say good guy, I'm not endorsing anybody. There could be other great people that come up, but he's an ex-cop. He understands communities. He comes from Marty's old district, and now that Carlo dropped out, unless someone comes up.
Well, we'll see after the primary if Barron, should he not go on to take that, if he would be interested in getting into the race. Because like you said, Carol, there's so many variables that are contingent on if A happens, then B is going to happen.
Well, you have so many things happening at once. I mean, it's the hardest thing for the voters. I mean, normally it's difficult, but you have so many things happening at once with the redistricting and the census and the lines changing, the numbers changing, and then depending on what happens in the primary, who's running, that I think that to some extent we will have to have this discussion again after the presidential, when things are a little bit more settled as far as who's really jumping in and who's going to make a real race for these.
Should we make a quick comment about the presidential? Romney, Obama.
The quickest of comments, Romney or Obama? Which race are it's going to be rough.
It's going to be a very interesting election. I think it's going to be very close.
I'm more interested in if Brooklyn is going to show up again for Obama like they did the first time when I waited in line to vote and saw all my friends and neighbors. So Brooklyn's going to show up again,
I think big time.
More Obama country. Carol, is Brooklyn
I'm not so sure.
Really?
I'm not so sure. That it depends on to what extent a lot of it was young voters, and I think they're a little bit more skeptical. They don't have quite the enthusiasm, because one thing is the hope and the other thing is what it really takes to govern and how difficult it is.
It's going to be a very close election.
To deliver on promises.
So we'll be watching, and I'm going to get a commitment on tape from you guys to come back as we get closer.
You
to
have my
these
commitment.
things.
I would love to do it. And thank you, Brian, so much for having me.
Oh, it's not time for thank yous.
But just to remind people, for information, I mean, there are two main sources for, I guess, nonpartisan information, and that's the Board of Elections and the League of Women Voters. So,
all right. Well, that's
I
the
think
end
we
of our
often
show
have.
today. The League of Women Voters, she made another pitch. So
I think we often have our information, maybe more thorough and more quickly. So.
Well, that's the last word. I want to thank Carole Melhman of the New York City League of Women Voters and Stephen Witt from Our Times Press. And thanks for watching Intersect. We'll see you next time. Bye now.
Thank you.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at brickartsmedia.org/BIT.